Alright, so in the previous video, we had our first experience with IntelliJ IDEA. We managed to create our very first Hello World application, and then we went on to modify the program to print out our name, my name, Tim in this case. It's now time to explore IntelliJ IDEA a little bit more. The idea is just to understand the various windows and start to understand how things are put together and how things work behind the scenes. And a good way of understanding how IntelliJ works is having a look at how it stores the files as we create our programs. So first things first though, if you look at the top of the screen up here, note that it actually gives you the location where IntelliJ IDEA has placed the program. In this case, the hello world or hello.java file. If you remember in the previous video, I defined the location where that was going to be. So in this case, it was on my desktop in a subfolder called Java Programs, then a subfolder being the name of the project Hello World. So what I'm going to do first is go into that folder and just have a look and see what the files look like in there. Now there's a few ways of doing it, but if you're actually in IntelliJ, there's a shortcut to take you to the location. So we can actually come up here, we can click on the project, noting that that's also telling us the project location. We can right click and I can select Reveal in Finder. Now the terminology will be slightly different if you're on a Windows machine or a Linux machine, but it'll be Reveal in Windows or Reveal in Explorer or something like that. But when we click that, notice that it's opened, and I'll just close one of these windows. It's actually opened the folder where our Hello World project is. And you can see that we're in the Java Programs folder, and I can then double click that to go into the Hello World folder. Now this is the location, this is the directory, if you will, that has been created by IntelliJ. So as you can see, there's files in there. There's hello world.iml. We've got this out folder, and I can expand that. We can see that it's got some files in it. And we've also got a source folder that's got a hello Java. So all of these files have been created for us by IntelliJ IDEA when we entered the appropriate command to do so when we created the project in the last video. So firstly, this hello world.iml, now that's a file obviously created by IntelliJ IDEA, and it's used to keep track rather of the state of this project. So in other words, it's a file used by IntelliJ to keep track of things like the files that are part of this project, the names and so on. So it's not something you never need to edit or open or use in any way. But with that said, you certainly wouldn't want to delete it either. It's very critical to IntelliJ IDEA to get your project working, and you can see it's also showing here in the left-hand side in this project pane as well. So basically, you need that file, and there's also these other folders. We've got an out folder with subfolders in it, and also this source folder. And you can see we've got this hello.java. If you recall in the last video, we created a Java class. That action IntelliJ created this file. And then when we typed the commands into that file, they were added to this file. And we can actually access that file. We can right click it. And I can just open it with, I'm just going to choose a tool, text edit on my Mac. You could use Notepad on Windows. And I'll just size it up so you can see it. But basically it mirrors what's in IntelliJ. We've got the lines that were showing in IntelliJ are showing in this file. So I'm going to close that now. Let's go and have a look at this out folder rather. And again, we go all the way down. We've got production and the hello world being the name of the project. And then finally we get down to this hello.class file. Now if I right click that and I try and open it, firstly I haven't got a regular option to open it, but I can choose other. And what I'm going to do is force the file to be opened with text edit from my Mac. But if you're actually using Windows, again, you can use Notepad, or you can use a text editor on Linux if need be. I'm going to open it up, but notice when I open it up, it's got some really strange characters there, as you can see. It has got some recognizable things, but it doesn't really equate to what we saw in the hello.java. Basically, it looks a little bit like mumbo jumbo. It certainly hasn't got the same code that we typed into IntelliJ, as you can see there. So what is this class file, this hello.class? Well, a class file is the compiled version of our program. And that would be the one that you would use to distribute and send your code out to other people. When I say compiled, what I mean is that we've taken the Java code that we've written, the code that's in our hello.java file, and we've had it converted into a format that the computer understands and can then run or execute. So when you saw the output down here in IntelliJ, that's happened because IntelliJ created a class file and then it executed that hello.class and followed the instructions, which in this case was to output hello Tim. So we'll be talking a lot more about class files in the future. For now, all you really need to know is that when you create a program in IntelliJ that we've done, they're saved up into a file format that ends in .java, and IntelliJ then will automatically, when you run the program within IntelliJ, create that class file and execute that on our behalf and show you the output on the screen. In general, you should do all your editing in IntelliJ and not be editing files in the folder that I showed you. So you wouldn't be doing that, editing those files outside of IntelliJ as a general rule. Basically, you do all your changes within IntelliJ, and that's the easiest way to keep track of things. And IntelliJ can keep track of things, and things will work nicely. All right, so we're back in IntelliJ now. So over here to the left is what's called the project pane. And at the moment, we're in what's called project view. And you can see project view because we've got this little drop down here. If for some reason you weren't in project view, you could select another view. But the project view is the default view, and that mirrors very closely what we can see in that folder. You can see that we've got very similar folder structure that we saw just earlier in the video when I went to the Mac Finder to have a look at that. So this is basically mirroring to a large degree what we saw a few minutes ago. The next thing I want to talk about briefly is the fact that you don't need to worry about quote-unquote saving your files or saving your project. In some programming languages and in some integrated development environments, you may need to actually manually save your files. Eclipse is an IDE for Java that by default you do have to save. So you can be typing code and it won't save the changes for you automatically, but IntelliJ will do that for you. It's automatically saving things for you. It's very rare that you need to do it manually. If you want to try and do that for some reason, you can come up here to the File menu, and there's an option there to Save All, and that would save any unsaved changes. But generally, it's happening for you behind the scenes, and you don't need to worry about manually saving it. All right, the next thing I want to show you is that these windows that you can see on here, these panes and windows, anything that's got a cog, like this one up here, or down here, means that we can manipulate that. So I can click on this now, and with that run window, which is what this one is, where we see the output from our program, I could, for example, click on Move to Right, and that's put it in the right-hand side. And that's really good for screen real estate purposes. If you want to change the screen to better fit your workflow, you can actually do that and change it. The other thing you can do is close windows. I can click on this button there, and you can see that's closed the project pane now, project window. I can click on this to open it or close it. And I can also come up here to the View menu, Tool Windows, and I can come back here and select a project if I wanted to open it again. Now note, in terms of that view window, going back to it again, we've got a keyboard shortcut to the right hand side there. So in my case, under project, it's telling me that Command and 1, I could manually type that code to open and close the project pane. So I could do something like this. I'm pressing Command 1. You can see it's opening and closing. So if you go back to your operating system, you'll see what the keystrokes are if you're not on a Mac for opening these various windows. So this is a way for you to manually manipulate those windows. The other useful thing that will be particularly of use to you if you've got more than one monitor is floating mode. So that's where you take a window, and for example, we'll go back to the run window again. If I click on that and go into floating mode, what that has enabled us to do now, we've now got a window that's independent of other windows. I can resize that and do whatever I like, and I can move that around. So if you had two monitors, you could move this off screen. You can see me taking it off screen now because I've got two monitors, and although you can't see it, it's now on the other monitor, and I can bring it back in. Very useful if you've got two monitors to be able to do that. And if you want to get it back to where it was, you just click on the cog again, click on floating mode again, and that takes it back to where it was prior to you setting that. Now the other thing you can do is you can save a layout. If you've got a particular way you wanted to save the windows to always go back to that particular state, you can come up here to Window and click on Store Current Layout as Default. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I change something, so let's just change the run window, move that to the bottom. Then we'll just run our program to make sure that it's working. And then if I come back up here to Window and click on Restore Default Layout, you can see it's changed that status for us, and we're back to how we were before. So it can be useful that if you want to set up your windows in a particular way to avoid you having to do that each time you go back into IntelliJ, you can set it once and have that default layout working for you. Alright, so that's just a very quick overview of some of the features of IntelliJ IDEA. Obviously we've only scratched the surface, but I think it's now time to move on to the next section. So in that section, we're going to start getting stuck into talking more about Java, and we're going to start learning the actual keywords and what they mean. Specifically, we're going to start working on something called data types and variables and build our understanding of Java from there. So I'll see you in that next section.